Greetings, dear viewers. Today's date is August 29th, 2025, and before you is the usual analysis of the situation on the front. At this moment, a large number of updates are coming in from the South Donetsk front, the Pokrovsk front, the Konstantinovka front, the Krasny Lyman front, and there is also information from the Sumy sector, which we will analyze and review in this video. Before moving on to the main material, I would like to make a small request for you to subscribe to the channel. As you know, I do not organize any fundraising campaigns, nor do I ask for donations. My only request is that you subscribe if this is not your first time watching such videos. I thank everyone who joins. Now let's turn to the Orekov front. On the Orekov front, heavy clashes continue in the vicinity of the village of Malaya Tokmachka. However, over the past several weeks, there has been no shift in favor of either the Russian or the Ukrainian side. Thus, fighting here remains purely positional. Let's move to the map updates. Today, reports emerged that Russian troops are advancing along the Dnipro riverbed. That is the direction in which Russian forces are moving. As you may recall, yesterday the armed forces of the Russian Federation struck Ukrainian positions in this area. A battle broke out, after which Ukrainian forces brought in reinforcements, counterattacked, and captured several Russian soldiers. Despite this, today it is reported that Russian troops advanced 2 kilometers here. So far, they have not been able to secure this position, but assault operations continue in an attempt to bypass this fortified area. I would like to remind you that the AFU has a powerful fortified sector here with lines of fortifications. Let's disable and then re-enable their display. As you can see, the yellow markings show Ukrainian fortifications, which Russian forces cannot reach. And of course, nobody is going to storm them head-on. That is why Russian troops are maneuvering in this direction. Since there are also fortifications here, the Russian armed forces cannot bypass Stepnogorsk from the right flank, so they are trying to do so from the left. In the coming days, we may expect significant shifts in favor of the Russian army unless the AFU brings in large reserves, organizes a counterattack, and pushes the Russians back. For now, that is the situation here. Russian troops have not secured the southern outskirts of Stepnogorsk, but many pro-Russian sources report successes in this area. Possibly, what they meant was the advance along the Dnipro shoreline. Let's continue moving along the map. We now go to the Guliaipol front and also the South Donetsk front. In the area of Temirovka, Russian forces have expanded their zone of control south of Temirovka. This area has come fully under Russian control and was completely cleared of enemy forces today. In addition, Russian troops are now advancing toward the villages of Berezovoy and Novonikolaivka. In the Berezovoy area, strikes are being carried out against AFU positions and temporary deployment sites using Russian FPV drones. Similarly, in Turnovo, FPV drones are striking Ukrainian positions. There were even FAB strikes recorded, although such strikes had only occurred 2 to 3 days ago against Ukrainian positions. All of this points to an impending Russian assault on Turnovo, followed by assault operations against Kamyshevaha. I want to remind you that this is the only stretch of the Donetsk region that remains under AFU control in this sector. There is also another small section of this front still under Ukrainian control. Russian troops are now making every effort to clear this territory, liberate the area, and then continue advancing toward Pokrovsk. Today there are also updates from south of Malievka. Confirmed reports have again been received that this area is completely cleared. The Ukrainian side confirmed the loss of this zone. I would remind you that earlier video footage from this sector had already appeared, including video from Voronovo and other segments of the front. These videos came from Russian sources, and today confirming information arrived from Ukrainian sources that the entire red-marked territory has passed under Russian control. Still, the Ukrainian side does not acknowledge the loss of these grey zones, yet they are nevertheless under Russian control, as Russia has provided proof. All evidence suggests that Russian troops are now moving toward the village of Sosnovka. FAB strikes are being carried out here, meaning assault operations against Sosnovka and Koroshi may begin in the coming days. As you know, the Russian Ministry of Defense had already announced that Voronoi came under Russian control, but so far no additional evidence has been provided either by Russia or Ukraine. Regardless, Russian forces continue to move in that direction. The same applies to Veliko-Mikhailovka, which has been hit with FAB strikes targeting AFU temporary positions. It has been repeatedly confirmed that after heavy FAB bombardments, Russian forces usually begin storming settlements. But let's not jump ahead. We continue monitoring developments here and move on. In the vicinity of Gavrilovka, FAB strikes were also recorded. Russian troops are exerting pressure near the village of Ivanovka and are seeking to advance north of the village of Filia. A nearby settlement has already passed fully under Russian control, and Russian troops are moving toward Novopavlovka. At this time, of course, no one plans to storm Novopavlovka itself, but Russian forces are getting closer, expanding their control zone near Filia. In the coming days, they may bypass Ivanovka and seize it. That concludes the updates for this sector today. Now let's move to the Pokrovsk front. According to some reports, Udaknoe has completely fallen under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. This claim often comes from Russian sources. I remind you that for a week now, Russian sources have insisted that Udaknoe is entirely under their control. The Ukrainian side does not acknowledge the loss and does not confirm the retreat from these territories. However, video recordings from Russian sources have been released from this position. We discussed this footage yesterday. Based on these data, all the territory marked in red yesterday came under Russian control. Everything points to the likelihood that Udaknoe has indeed passed under Russian control, though Ukrainian forces are attempting counterattacks to push the Russians back, or at least to stabilize the front line and prevent Russian forces from advancing a bit further north toward industrial facilities and mines. From there, the Russians could advance towards Sergeyevka and cut the last supply road to Pokrovsk, which is already under fire control. FPV drones are actively reaching this road. As for the village of Kotlinyo, some reports indicate it is almost entirely under Russian control, with only its northern part still held by the AFU. Clearing operations and zone expansion are underway. By early next week, significant changes in favor of the Russian army are expected here unless the AFU stabilizes the line. Moving on to Pokrovsk itself, important news comes from here. Russian troops are already advancing inside Pokrovsk. As you know, earlier Russian troops, DRG groups, and assault detachments were spotted in central Pokrovsk. Now there are reports that Russian forces have launched a storming of the city, advancing gradually in this direction. There is also information that Russian troops are advancing through these multi-story buildings. Assault operations are ongoing for almost every structure. By early next week, we may see significant shifts here in favor of the Russian armed forces. Today, a video from this position was published. You know that Lisovka was previously under Russian control, but Ukrainian forces counterattacked and pushed them back in places. Today, video came from this location showing that the entire red-marked area has come under Russian control. The advance here reached up to 1 kilometer. Reports also indicate fighting has begun south of Novopavlovka, though most likely this refers to forested areas nearby. Since the information comes as short news reports, once confirming evidence or video appears, we will update the map. For now, this is the only update for this part of the front. Now we move to the settlement of Mirnograd. As you know, earlier reports said that Russian troops began assault operations on Mirnograd from its northern outskirts. But today, materials emerged showing that Russian forces have so far been unable to secure positions in northern Mirnograd. The Ukrainian side is also counterattacking Russian positions in the vicinity of the village of Nikolaevka. A video from this area showed Ukrainian positions under attack. Possibly it was Ukrainian DRG groups or assault units, but regardless, in this location, Ukrainian troops came under attack. The entire area highlighted in yellow has passed under AFU control. This allows us to confirm that this stretch of the front is not held by Russian forces, and perhaps is even in the grey zone. As for the settlement of Rodinsko, some reports say that Russian troops have engaged in fighting in the northern part of Rodinsko, attacking AFU positions there. Ukrainian armed forces positions came under attack. Thus, we can conclude that Russian troops are advancing toward Rodinske from the direction of Sukhenske, approaching the northern outskirts. If Russian forces manage to secure positions on the northern edge of Rodinska, the Russian armed forces will in effect be able to reach the supply road and physically cut it off, although supplying the Pokrovsk grouping via this road is already extremely difficult, since it is under fire control. We can also see Russian forces advancing west of Sukhenske. Yesterday we discussed their progress on this section of the front. It is also reported that assault operations are currently underway against tree lines and fortified areas in this sector. In doing so, Russian troops are indeed trying to cut off the supply road by taking it under direct physical control. Let's move further along the map. In the vicinity of Stepi, Rubezhnoye, as well as Novotroitske and Zolotoy Kolodets, attacks were carried out and the zone of control expanded in favor of the Russian army. Despite the fact that earlier there had been a Ukrainian counterattack supposedly cutting off a Russian grouping from supplies, at present Russian troops are moving toward Novotroitske. Ukrainian positions here came under attack. Ukrainian armed forces positions were also attacked near Zolotoy Kolodets, Rubezhnoye and in the Stepi area. Thus, we can confirm that this entire territory is fully controlled by the Russians, with their forces expanding the zone of control and widening their flanks. In the coming days, we can expect significant advances on this axis. Russian aviation is also active here, with FAB strikes hitting Ukrainian positions and temporary deployment sites near Dobropilya, where FABs struck Ukrainian targets. That's the situation here for today. Let's continue along the map and move to the Kostiantynivka axis. At present, no major changes are marked on the map, but reports indicate that Russian forces are conducting a clearing operation in the village of Klebanbyk. Recall that throughout the past week, there were repeated claims of Klebanbyk being taken under Russian control, as well as full clearance of Shcherbinivka, but these reports were not confirmed. Yesterday we discussed updates in this sector. The area marked in red had fully come under Russian control. As of today's recording, reports say that the clearing of Klebanbyk continues. Once this settlement is entirely secured, the entire section of the front, including adjacent territories, will pass under Russian control, since the Klebanbyk reservoir lies to the north, depriving the Ukrainian armed forces of access to this combat zone. As for Shcherbinivka, the encirclement ring is gradually tightening, with Russian troops conducting mine clearance and sweeps. Small scattered Ukrainian groups still operate here, but they do not put up serious resistance. However, these are news source reports, and the true situation will become clearer in the coming days. According to Russia's Ministry of Defense, the settlement of Nelipivka has come fully under Russian control. This information appeared yesterday evening, but there are still no video confirmations or other evidence. Recall that such information can sometimes be delayed by a couple of days, so by early next week we will likely see significant shifts in favor of the Russian army, possibly including assaults near Pleshchivka. Russian forces are advancing along the railway line, clearing adjacent areas. That's the latest from this direction. Next we move to the Siversk direction. Here, clearing operations continue in the Serebryansky forest, which remains only partially under control. Reports say Russian forces are conducting a sweep of this forested area. Attacks are also being carried out on Ukrainian positions in the northern part of Siversk, with strikes on temporary deployment points and fortified positions. Although Russian forces managed to reach the outskirts of the defensive lines and trenches, further advance has not been achieved. Some sources report that Serebryanka is in the grey zone, not under full Russian control. Thus, no major changes here so far, and we continue monitoring developments. On the Krasny-Lyman axis, as of this recording, reports indicate the front line has been straightened near the settlement of Zarekne, where a so-called pocket had been forming. Yesterday, video confirmed that the area marked in red came under Russian control. This morning, it was reported that the zone is fully cleared and effectively under Russian armed forces control, with advances of up to 400 meters. Ukrainian positions in northern Zarekne were also attacked. As for the settlement of Kolodizy, Russian forces reached the fortified area and are conducting mine clearance and sweeps. Kolodizy is almost fully under Russian control, with further advances likely in the coming days. Regarding Chandriholov, reports suggest that most of this settlement has come under Russian control, although the southern part remains under Ukrainian forces. Ukraine is bringing in reserves from the Novoselki area and actively using FPV drones, which complicates Russian advances south of Chandriholov. For Seredne, conflicting data remain. A week ago, Russia's defense ministry announced full control, but there is still no objective confirmation. Yesterday, the area marked in red was reported to have come under Russian control, moving to the Novomikhailivka area, where heavy fighting is ongoing. Yesterday, this settlement fully came under Ukrainian control, confirmed by video materials. Today, reports indicate Russian forces attacked Ukrainian positions, advancing 1.5 kilometers, though the exact direction is unclear. Possibly this territory had previously been under Russian control, and the advance happened in the adjacent zone. At the moment, Novomikhailivka is likely in the grey zone, under the control of neither side. We'll continue monitoring the situation. In Kupiansk, no significant changes have been recorded on the map. Heavy battles continue in the northern part of the city. The Ukrainian side reports partial pushing back of Russian forces, while the Russian side claims an expansion of its zone of control. The information remains contradictory, and without video confirmations, no changes are marked on the map. In the Volchansk area, heavy fighting also continues, with both sides actively using FPV drones, preventing any breakthrough. The front line here remains stable. The same applies to the Lipsy direction, where Ukrainian forces are attacking Russian positions near Hlubok, but no progress has been made. On the Kherson front, battles also continue without significant changes. On the Sumy axis, fighting is underway in 4 settlements: Sadki, Yunikivka, Andriivka, and Kondratovka. In Sadki, heavy fighting is ongoing in the forested areas east of the settlement, where Ukrainian fortified positions have not yet been taken. In Yunikivka, Ukrainian FPV drones are striking Russian positions, while Russian forces are clearing the settlement itself and expanding control southward. In the Andriivka and Kondratovka areas, Ukrainian positions are being hit by Russian FPV drones. Ukrainian assault groups are unable to advance toward Oleksivka, as their attacks are suppressed on approach. Earlier, Ukrainian forces attempted to advance in this direction, but failed to gain a foothold. That's all for now. Stay tuned for updates.